Ethan's smile reappeared, but this time it was gentler and more genuine. "I'm available if you ever need to talk, Sarah. Anytime." With that, he gave me a tiny nod and turned away. But before he got to the sidewalk, I yelled out to him, my voice seizing in my throat. "Ethan, wait." He came to a halt and returned my gaze, his expression interested. "Yes. Would you like to come in for a cup of coffee?" I inquired, the words spilling out of my mouth before I could control them. He seemed shocked, but pleasantly so. "I'd love to." As I brought him into the house, I couldn't help but feel like I was crossing a line that I hadn't wanted to cross. But the truth was, I was lonely, and the prospect of spending some time with Ethan, getting to know him better, was too appealing to pass up. We settled into the kitchen, and I preoccupied myself with pouring coffee, attempting to ignore the nervous flutter in my tummy. Ethan observed me with a calm, easygoing demeanor, but there was still an undertone of tension between us, which neither of us seemed eager to address. "So," he continued after a moment of stillness, "how are you doing, Sarah? Really?" I paused, my hands quivering slightly as I poured the coffee. "I've been fine. Just the usual. Work and home. Nothing exciting." Ethan chuckled quietly. "You deserve better, you know. You deserve to be happy." His remark struck me harder than I expected, and I peered up at him, searching for any signs of insincerity. But all I saw was a man who truly cared, a man who saw more in me than I had seen in myself in a long time. "I am happy," I said, but the words seemed hollow even to me. Ethan did not press the issue. Instead, he sipped his coffee and reclined back in his chair, his eyes never leaving me. "You're a good person, Sarah. And I believe that sometimes people like you forget to care for themselves and do what actually makes them happy." I had no idea how to respond to that. He was correct, of course. I'd spent so much time caring for everyone else, Lucas, our home, my job, that I'd forgotten about my own wants and ambitions. "Maybe," I said, just above a whisper. Ethan smiled again, that warm, genuine smile that made my heart throb in ways I hadn't experienced in years. "If you ever need anything, Sarah, anything at all, I'm here for you." There it was again, an offer of friendship, of something more than polite small conversation over coffee. It was an offer that was both horrifying and exciting, and I had no idea what to do with it. "Thank you, Ethan," I responded, my voice quivering slightly. "That means a lot." We spent the next hour talking, the discussion flowing naturally between us. He talked to me about his job, interests, and life before relocating to the area. And I found myself opening myself to him in ways I hadn't to anyone else in a long time. Ethan had a way of making me feel noticed and understood. As the afternoon progressed, the tension between us seemed to dissipate, giving way to a pleasant familiarity. But beneath the surface, I could still sense the undercurrent of attraction, the draw that had brought us together in the beginning. Ethan didn't stand up until the sun started to drop, his countenance sorrowful. "I should probably get going," he remarked, despite his obvious reluctance to depart. "Of course," I responded, standing up as well. "Thanks for the company, Ethan. It was nice." "It was," he acknowledged, fixing his gaze on mine one last time. "I hope we can do this again sometime." I nodded, but wasn't sure if it was a good idea. But the fact was that I wanted to see him again, to feel that connection, that sensation of life that had been lacking for so long. As I led him to the door, Ethan turned to face me, his countenance somber. "Sarah," he said, his voice low and stern, "I don't want to complicate matters for you, but I think there is something between us, and I do not wish to disregard it." My pulse raced as I glanced up at him, the gravity of his words settling in. There was something between us that went beyond friendliness and basic neighborly concern. And no matter how hard I tried to deny it, I couldn't. "I don't know, Ethan," I said, my voice quivering. "I am married. This could be dangerous." "I know," he said, his eyes wide with understanding. "But I can't control how I feel. I believe you feel the same way I do." I didn't respond, but the expression in my eyes must have given it away. Ethan moved closer, reaching out to softly touch my arm. "If you ever change your mind," he added softly, "you know where to find me." I never imagined my life would take such an unexpected turn in the middle of a quiet spring afternoon. At 39, I had established a comfortable routine with my spouse, Lucas. We had been married for 14 years and lived in a quiet suburb of Seattle. Our lives were predictable, stable, and frankly, a little too routine. But I never expected a simple tap on the door to result in something that would shake the very core of my marriage. It was Thursday, and Lucas was on a business trip, which had grown more common in recent years. I was working from home, enjoying the peace and warmth of the spring sun streaming through the windows. The day was quiet, almost too quiet, and I found myself yearning for some type of excitement, something to break up the routine. That's when I heard a knock. It was hard but not pushy, just enough to get me out of my head. I didn't expect anyone, so I paused for a bit before answering the door. When I opened it, I was surprised to see Ethan, our neighbor from across the street, standing there with a warm smile. Ethan was in his early 40s, tall, with dark hair that was always nicely disheveled and piercing hazel eyes that made you feel as if he was peering deep into your soul. He was nice, constantly smiling or waving as we passed each other in the neighborhood, but we had never truly spoken beyond polite small conversation. "Hi, Sarah," he said, his voice warm and welcoming. "I hope I am not bothering you. I just wanted to see whether everything was all right." I noticed Lucas' car was gone, and I know he's generally in charge of things around the house. I grinned, surprised by his attentiveness. "Hello, Ethan." "No, you're not troubling me at all. Lucas is out of town for work, but everything is okay. Thank you for checking in, however." Ethan's smile broadened as he leaned against the doorframe. "I am delighted to hear that. You're here alone, and I thought you could use some company." I felt a flutter of nervousness in my gut. There was something about the way he said it that left me feeling both flattered and uneasy. I was not used to receiving this level of attention, especially from someone like Ethan. "That's very kind of you," I said, keeping my tone light and friendly. "But I'm sure you have better things to do than keep me company." "Actually," he murmured, his gaze locked on mine, "I don't. And I'd hate to think of you being here alone." His stare was warm and sincere, which was difficult to resist. Part of me wanted to welcome him in, to have some conversation, and break up the monotony of the day. But another part of me, the one that was still acutely conscious of the fact that I was a married woman, hesitated. "I appreciate the offer," I murmured, my voice lower now, "but I'm perfectly well. I am just trying to get some work done." Ethan nodded, but did not move. Instead, he stared at me with such intensity that my heart skipped a beat. "You know, Sarah," he continued, turning to a more serious tone, "I have always felt you were an amazing woman. Lucas is a lucky man." The compliment caught me off guard, and I felt a flush rise up my neck. "Thank you, Ethan. That's quite lovely of you to say." "It's the truth," he insisted, coming closer, his gaze never leaving mine. "I've seen you around, and I've always noticed how polite and attentive you are. It's unusual to meet someone like you." My heart was racing, and I had no idea how to reply. Something about the way he looked at me, and how his words seemed to wrap around me like a warm blanket, made it difficult for me to think straight. "I don't know what to say," I muttered, feeling both flattered and guilty. "You don't have to say anything," Ethan said, his voice lowering to a whisper. "I just wanted you to know how much I admire you." Before I could grasp what was going on, he reached out and lightly caressed my arm. It was a simple gesture, yet it shot a tremor through me, reminding me how close we were. The air between us was thick with tension, the kind that made it difficult to think clearly. "Ethan, I started, but my voice died off as I stared up into his eyes. "I'm sorry," he replied hastily, jerking his hand back, his face full with concern. "I did not intend to make you uncomfortable. I guess I got carried away." I shook my head, attempting to dispel the emotional fog that was spinning around in my mind. "No, it's fine. You did not. I wasn't expecting—" "I understand," he replied, taking a step back. "I do not want to make things difficult between us. I just thought, maybe you could use a friend." His statements were heartfelt, and I knew he was being truthful. There was no hostility or secret agenda, only a genuine promise of companionship. And in that moment, I understood how much I desired it, how much I needed someone to talk to and connect with. Maybe I could, I said, just above a whisper. With that, he leaned in and laid a delicate kiss to my cheek, his lips lingering for a brief time before pulling away. And then he was gone, leaving me standing there with my heart pumping and my mind racing. The days that followed were a haze of uncertainty and shame. I couldn't stop thinking about Ethan, the way he looked at me and how he made me feel. I knew it was bad, but it was also thrilling in a manner I hadn't experienced in years. Lucas went home a few days later, and I settled into my routine, attempting to block out thoughts of Ethan. But it was impossible. Every time I saw him in the neighborhood and he waved or smiled at me, I felt the same draw and need. Then one evening, while Lucas was working late and I was at home alone, there came another tap on the door. My heart skipped a beat as I opened the door, and there he was, Ethan, standing on my doorway, his countenance a mix of determination and vulnerability. "Ethan, what are you doing here?" I inquired, my voice trembling. "I couldn't stay away," he said, his gaze drawn to mine. "I understand this is bad, Sarah, but I can't stop thinking about you. I need to know whether you feel the same way." I glanced at him, my heart beating, and the words stuck in my throat. I knew what I should say. Tell him to go, that this was a mistake. But the reality was, I didn't want him to leave. I wanted him to remain and see where things may go. "I don't know," I eventually said quietly, my voice barely audible. Ethan took a step closer, reaching out to cut my cheek. "Then let me show you," he murmured, his lips brushing against mine in a delicate yet hungry kiss. I hesitated for only a moment before giving in, placing my arms around him and kissing him back. It was a kiss that included all of our unspoken wishes and feelings, making it impossible to reject. What followed was a flurry of passion and remorse, a combination of emotions that left me both excited and afraid. We spent the night together, exploring the connection that had been developing between us for several weeks. It was thrilling, but it was also wrong, and I was aware that the repercussions could be disastrous. As the night progressed, and the truth of what we had done became more apparent, I felt a strong sense of remorse and anxiety. I had crossed a line that could never be undone, and I didn't know how to confront Lucas or live with the secret I was now carrying. Ethan seemed to sense my distress. As he dressed to go, he turned to face me, his countenance filled with concern. "Sarah, I don't regret what happened, but I can understand if you do. If you wish to quit this now, I will respect your decision." I wasn't sure what to say. A part of me wanted to end it, to be rid of the shame and terror. But another part of me, the one that felt alive for the first time in years, refused to let go. "I don't know, Ethan," I finally answered, my voice trembling. I need time to think." He nodded with understanding in his eyes. "Take as much time as you need. I am here for you, whatever you chose." With that, he went, leaving me alone to think. The house's silence, which had once provided comfort, now felt oppressive. I'd crossed a line, and there was no turning back. The weeks that followed were filled with turmoil and contemplation. I couldn't quit thinking about Ethan and what we'd shared. But I couldn't escape the shame and anxiety of what would happen if Lucas found out. In the end, I knew I needed to make a decision. I couldn't continue leading a second life and lying Lucas. But I couldn't deny the connection I felt with Ethan, or how he made me feel. So I made a decision that changed everything. I opted to stay with Lucas, to attempt to rebuild our marriage and find the happiness that had been absent for so long. But I also chose to be honest with myself and accept my feelings for Ethan, even if I couldn't act on them. It wasn't simple, and the road ahead was full of obstacles. But I knew I'd made the correct decision, that I'd taken the first step toward true happiness for both myself and my spouse. And as I moved forward, I kept the memory of that spring afternoon, the moment when everything changed. It was a memory that would stick with me forever, a reminder of the narrow line between desire and devastation, and the decisions we make that shape our lives.